At this time, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Johnston County Board of Elections for today, April the, what's the date? November the 26th. Can we start again? And at this time, before we begin our meeting, I'd like to invite you all to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is a special meeting of the Johnston County Board of Elections, which is called for the consideration of 3 election protests filed by Judge Jefferson Griffin. The board is all present, so I would declare that we have a quorum and can conduct business. Before we get started, I want to explain the procedure that we're going to be following. We are here about 3 election protests filed by Jefferson Griffin, a candidate for Associate Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Seat 6. There were 5 total protests filed. The State Board, by order dated November 21, took jurisdiction of over two of those protests, those being related to overseas voters and voters with incomplete registration records. There were 3 protests that remain within our jurisdiction, and those are the ones that we will be taking up today, and those deal with deceased voters, felon voters, and unregistered or removed voters. The board conducted a preliminary hearing on these matters on November the 21st, 2024. At that time, the board determined that the protests were timely filed, that they were based substantially in compliance with GS 163-182.9, and they were based on the November 20 order from the State Board to assume probable cause, that the protest established probable cause, and we also determined that the protest did establish probable cause to believe that an irregularity had occurred. Because the board determined that these requirements were met, it scheduled this hearing today to consider the protests. All interested parties were notified of this hearing. Today, anyone who wants to speak about the protests and evidence relating to the protests may do so. They will be called upon to bring their information to the board, and the board can ask questions of them. Our task will be to determine if there is substantial evidence of a violation of election law, an irregularity, or misconduct sufficient to cast doubt on the apparent results of the election. We will review the evidence presented today, and we will make factual and legal findings. We're recording today, and everything that is said will be a matter of record. Like a court proceeding, we will administer oaths, and those wishing to speak will need to be sworn or affirmed. We will ask the clerk to swear witnesses. We will ask the clerk to mark and enter protests into the record. The protest petition has been reviewed by the board. There's no need to read it into the record. It is a matter of record for those who want to read it. Those that are going to speak can speak to their own knowledge and experience. By way of the order that we will be following today, we will first hear from the protester or from anyone here on his behalf first. We will then receive any other evidence which the protester or anyone acting on his behalf would wish to present on his behalf. We will then ask Leanne Price, our elections director, to provide evidence regarding the board's records pertaining to the voters at issue. And then we will open for anyone else, we'll open the floor for anyone else who wishes to be heard with evidence relating to the protests. We're going to consider the evidence for each protest together, make a decision as to each challenged ballot, and then move on to the next protest. For example, we're going to take first the protest dealing with deceased voters separately from the protest dealing with felon voters separately from the protest dealing with unregistered or not registered voters. So that's the procedure that we're going to be following today. We now are going to begin to receive information and evidence from those who wish to present it. And I'm going to call upon first the protester is the protester present.
Yes, sir. My name is Andrew Heath, Wake County Bar, 35334. I'm here representing Jefferson Griffin and his campaign.
Okay. Welcome. Do you wish to make a presentation outside of the petition that is already, the protest matters that have already been filed?
Just if I could be heard at the appropriate time, sir, and I don't wish to offer any evidence, but do seek to clarify on the record that accompanying each of the three protests from Judge Griffin was an affidavit, which each of the three affidavits had an attachment 1 with a list of the challenged voters. And could you clarify, sir, if that has been received into evidence?
That is among the items that we have received and that I was referring to earlier.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Woodruff, if we could ask the court reporter to mark those protest petitions in their entirety as exhibits 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And she has those.
Madam Court Reporter, will you do that for us? All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak or present anything to the board on behalf of the protester? Well, then, we would like to move on to Ms. Leanne Price. And Leanne, if you would come forward and be sworn.
Ms. Price, do you affirm that the information that you're going to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name, address, and job title for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Leanne Price. I reside at 501 I was about to give my work address. I live at 501 South Walnut Street, Princeton, North Carolina, and I am the Johnston County Board of Elections Director.
That's all right. I didn't know what date it was while
I know that.
Anyway. But we're going to do the best we can. Okay. As director, you have received the protest from Mr. Griffin. Is that correct?
That's correct. I received it on November the 19th, 2024 at 3:31 p.m.
Upon receiving that protest, did you see to it that the notice of this hearing was provided in accordance with GS 163 182.10b?
Yes, sir. It went out November the 21st.
When you received the protest petition from Judge Griffin, did you perform any research as to the matters alleged in the petition?
Yes, sir.
What research did you do?
Okay, we compared the list of deceased voters to the voters on our DHHS report, which stands for Department of Human and Health Services. We compared the list of the felons with the votes to the Department of Corrections report that we received. And we also used the State Board of Elections voter search lookup to compare the voter registrations.
Okay.
The DHS reports and the DOC reports are obtained from our SEAM systems, which is our state database, which stands for State Elections Information Management System.
Okay. I'd like for you to go through what you found from
Okay.
that. And if I may, let's do it by groups.
Yes, sir.
By groups. The three groups again: deceased voters, felon, and removed voters.
Okay.
And Mr. Woodruff, for purposes of the board and clarification for the record, Ms. Price has prepared some documentation. We'd like to mark that as exhibit number 4, and that has been provided to counsel for both parties.
Okay, thank you very much.
And it's at your desk.
And which of this information before us is number 4?
The deceased voters list.
Both.
Okay. All right. then let's go through the deceased voter group first.
Okay.
And Ms. Price, I'm going to let you go through these one by one and tell us what you found out with respect to each one.
Yes, sir. I challenged the vote cast by the first one, Harold Eastwood Ennis, due to the fact that this gentleman died on October the 23rd, 2024, and he voted during early voting. And then I challenged Ann Zoe Clark, and all these challenges were done on November 5th, which was an election day. I challenged Ms. Clark, her ballot cast, due to the fact of her date of death was November the 2nd, 2024, and her absentee ballot was accepted and approved by the board on October the 18th. I also challenged Mavis House, whose date of death was 10/23, and she voted absentee by mail, and her absentee ballot was approved by the board on October the 10th. Next, we have I challenged James Addison Eldridge. His date of death was 10/27. He also voted absentee by ballot, which his absentee by ballot was approved by the board on October the 18th. Next, we have Betty Steer, that I challenged her ballot cast. She also voted absentee by mail, and her date of death was November the 5th, and the board approved her absentee ballot on October the 23rd.
Sorry, what was her date of death again?
Her date of death was November the 5th.
Thank you.
Linda Bowden Horseman. I challenged her ballot cast. Her date of death was October the 31st, 2024. She voted early voting, and her vote date was November 25th. The next ballot challenge that I did was William Stewart. His date of death was October the 19th, and he voted absentee ballot by mail, and his ballot was received and approved by the board on the 17th of October. I challenged the ballot cast by Suzanne Buki. Her date of death was October the 28th, and she voted early voting on October the 22nd. I challenged Ruby Kate, whose date of death was October the 23rd, 2024. She also voted absentee by mail, and the board approved her ballot on October the 17th. And I also challenged Sally Shepard, whose date of death was October the 30th, 2024. She also voted absentee by mail, and her absentee ballot was approved on November the 1st, 2024.
So all of these you challenged,
Yes, sir.
all right?
And by challenged, you mean,
I challenged these before the board on election day.
right,
Okay. And
And the board,
go ahead.
y'all accepted those challenges, and those votes were removed at canvass.
Okay. That's what I was leading up to. So
I'm sorry.
all of the challenged voters under the deceased category, those votes have already been removed as a result of the canvass.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there any, do you have anything else that you would like to add to that?
No,
That
sir.
part
No,
of your
no, sir.
presentation? Okay. We're going to do this by categories, and since we're on the deceased voters, we're going to ask if there's anyone else here who would like to add anything to the record relative to these voters.
Your Honor, we just simply ask that the board include in its findings of fact and conclusions of law the testimony that was just heard.
we will make findings and conclusions at the end of this presentation. And we will make findings and conclusions. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Anything else that anybody would like to say about this group? Well, I would say now to the board, the law requires us to make a written decision of findings of fact and conclusions of law based on the information we have received. We're proceeding under GS 163-182-10. Before we do that, do any of the board members have any comments or questions, or is there anything that you'd like to say? If so, please feel free to do so at this time. Hearing nothing, we will proceed to a decision on each voter based upon what we've heard and how we should proceed from this point. And council has advised us that we need to make decisions and findings as to each voter in this group, in all the groups, but in other words, we're not going to treat them together, we're going to treat them separately. So, at this point, the board is really ready to entertain a motion with respect to each voter, and we'll start with voter Harold Eastwood Ennis. Is there a motion from a board member relative to his ballot?
I move that based on the evidence that we have received, that Mr. Ennis's ballot was not counted in the official count, so there's no irregularity.
Second motion.
Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to Ann Zoe Clark.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Ann Zoe Clark ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now let's move to the voter Mavis Carroll House.
I move that the ballot for Mavis Carroll House be removed from the official count.
It wasn't in the official account.
Was not in the official count.
All right. And therefore no irregularity
And
occurred.
therefore no irregularity occurred.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
We'll move now to James Addison Eldred.
I make a motion that James Addison Eldred's ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move now to Betty Lou Steer.
I move that Betty Lou Steer's ballot was not counted in the official count, so there's no irregularity.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We move now to Linda Bowden Horseman.
I make a motion that Linda Bowden Horseman's ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. William Allen Stewart.
I make a motion that the ballot for William Allen Stewart was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to William Allen Stewart.
I make a motion that William Allen Stewart's ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move to Suzanne Irene I can't read my,
Motion.
sheet. Right, thank you.
Yes, I move that Suzanne Bokey's ballot was not counted in the official count, so there was no irregularity.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to Ruby Josephine Kate.
I
I
move-
ma-
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I make a motion that Ruby Kate's ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Finally, we move to Sally Williams Shepherd.
I move that the ballot for Sally Williams Shepherd was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now, having made those findings as to each voter in this group, the board should consider and needs to make conclusions of law, and we need to do this separately for each voter as well. So, looking at our list, I'm going to ask if the board wishes to make a conclusion, or moves to make a conclusion as to each individual voter in the same way that we did with respect to the findings for each individual voter. So we will begin with Harold Eastwood Ennis.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that no irregularity occurred with respect to his vote.
And for purposes of the record, would that be, are you attempting to affirm or deny the protest petition as it relates to that particular voter?
I denied and the voter should be denied. Excuse me.
The protest should be
Based upon
defined.
the findings of the board, the challenge as to voter Harold Ennis should be denied.
Second?
Is there, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move to the vote of Ann Zoe Clark.
Okay, based on the findings of the board, the challenge to Ann Zoe Clark should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mavis Carroll House.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to Mavis Carroll House should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next we move to James Addison Eldred.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to the voter James Addison Eldred should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Betty Lou Steer.
Based on the findings of the board, the challenge to Betty Lou Steer should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Linda Bowden Horseman.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to the voter Linda Bowden Horseman should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. William Allen Stewart.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to William Allen Stewart should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Suzanne Irene Monkey.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to Suzanne Irene Bokey should be denied.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ruby Josephine Kate.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to voter Ruby Josephine Kate should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sally Williams Shepherd.
Based upon the findings of the board as the challenge of Sally Williams Shepherd should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This concludes our findings and conclusions of law relative to the deceased voters. It's now appropriate for us to consider an ordering paragraph for this group in which we find for which voters irregularity occurred or did not occur. And so I would ask the board for your input as to this matter.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that the county attorney draw an order consistent with the actions of this board and in this hearing for the chairman that no irregularity, excuse me, yeah, an irregularity did not occur with respect to the following 10 voters.
And those are the 10 voters that are listed in the deceased voters?
Yes, Harold Ennis, Hannah Clark, Mavis House, James Eldred, Betty Steer, Linda Horseman, William Stewart, Suzanne Bokey, Ruby Kate, and Sally Shepherd.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe that will conclude the initial review of this group. There may be some other motions for the group, other voters as a whole at the end, or not. But for now, I believe we have dealt with the challenges as to the deceased voters. And I would turn to council and say, have we?
Yes, and for clarity of the record, it's the protest. We've dealt with the protest related to the deceased voters.
Right.
And I know that the process is a little bit confusing, but it's the protest, not the challenge. Challenge happened before.
So, at any rate, what we're saying is that we have, do you have sufficient findings, conclusions, and proposed ordering paragraphs to draft an order based upon or for these deceased voters?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move along to the second group. And the second group is the felons. And I would first like to ask if there's anyone that would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Griffin on these first.
Yes, Your Honor. In consulting with the county attorney just before this hearing, I understand that we're in agreement about all but one of the voters. And that voter is Amanda Barefoot Flowers. And I guess at the appropriate time, I'd just like to be heard on that one voter.
Well, Why don't you go ahead and speak to that right now?
Okay,
if
thank you,
don't
sir.
mind.
Is it all right if I-
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, for purposes of clarity of the record, you have a packet, as does council, that is labeled felons with votes. And behind it is all of the backup documentation from the elections director. And I would ask that that be marked as Exhibit number 5.
Granted, and I would ask the court reporter to do that, please. You may proceed.
We get you on one microphone or the other. So for this one sitting or this one standing, either one.
Can I sit, Your Honor?
Yes,
Thank you.
please make yourself comfortable.
Thank you. Your Honors, the Jefferson Griffin campaign evidence is limited to the four corners of the protest affidavit and attachment that is before you. I understand that the county may have additional evidence that contributes to your findings and conclusion with respect to that voter, and we just simply ask that sufficient findings be made just to preserve the record. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on behalf of the protester in this case? In that case, I would like to call upon our elections director again. Leanne, would you come forward and tell us what you found out about this group of the felons?
Okay. Okay, I challenged the ballot cast by Sampson Fitzgerald Sr. due to Mr. Fitzpatrick coming on our Department of Corrections list that he is serving a felon sentence. I challenged the vote cast by Ronald McFarland, that he also came on our Department of Corrections list, that he is also a felon, serving a felon sentence. I also challenged the Thurman Ruffin Jr., who is also on our felon list, that he is serving a felon sentence. I also challenged the ballot cast by James Madison Holt. He is also currently serving a felon sentence. To the next one, Amanda Barefoot Flowers. According to our research that we did, Ms. Flowers there's a person with the same name, different middle names, different North Carolina driver's license. One lives in Gaston County and one lives in Johnston County. And the one that lives here is not the one that is serving a felon sentence. So that is the one that we did not remove at the time we were removing other people. D'Angelo Covington, I challenged that ballot. Mr. Covington is serving a felony sentence. Also, Kendra Boldrick, she is also serving a felony sentence, as well as Jared Daughtry. His ballot was also challenged, and he is currently serving a felony sentence.
So, as counsel stated, the only one at issue with the challenger would be the Flowers voter, and you have found two of those. How did you determine that which was which, and which was not, that the Johnston County one was not the one that's serving the Senate.
Okay, the list that we received from the Department of Corrections, it lists the names, I don't know what I've done. They list the name of her name, and then it tells you what county, so it lists Gaston County, and then it lists Johnston County as below. There's two different, the date of birth's the same, the driver's license was not the same, and the address. So it was determined that the Amanda Flowers is the one, it's got DOC beside it, Department of Corrections. That's the one that's serving the sentence. This was like a duplicate report. We get reports from DOT that has duplicate names that we have to research all the time. Determine which one belongs to us and which one belongs to another county.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Would you like to respond?
Just a brief question, Your Honor. Was any effort made to contact the Board of Elections, the county board in the county that convicted felon voter was revealed to be living in?
Is your question, did we in our office here make that contact from here, as our
Yes, sir.
staff do that?
Either the board or the staff, yes, sir.
That
Thank
was
you.
his question.
No, sir, we did not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, would I be permitted to address the board as well?
Yes, please. If this is something that you want to express to us about this, take the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I don't
Is your
know
mic on?
if my mic is working. Thank you. My name is James Whalen. I'm here on behalf of the Democratic Party. And I'd like to just briefly address this. I believe the board received letters from both Judge Griffin and Justice Riggs' campaigns. One of the things that's addressed in those letters is the standard that the board is applying to try to figure out the facts here. And as Mr. Chairman, you identified at the very beginning, the board does have to make findings of fact. Those findings of fact have to be proven by Judge Griffin. And here, Judge Griffin's campaign, as I understand it, did not send the notice required to any of these voters. They sent a postcard. They did not make any effort to look up these voters in any databases to compare, and they did not make any effort to reach out to these voters to collect information. And since Judge Griffin has not presented any information about whether these two individuals are the same, seeing as what he's doing is accusing Ms. Flowers of committing a crime without any evidence of doing so, we'd ask that the board find that there is not sufficient evidence to show that there is election irregularity with respect to this voter, since the only information related to this is that somebody with her same name in a different county with a different driver's license was convicted of a crime.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else want to speak relative to any of the voters on this list?
Your Honor, if I could just respond briefly.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Jefferson Griffin campaign and Judge Griffin are not accusing any voters of committing any crime. We're simply putting forward an affidavit that is based on publicly available information that there was a reasonable belief that someone who had committed a felony may have voted and was not permitted to by law. So just point of clarification there. And that's really all I have to say.
We certainly duly know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One more time, is there anyone else that would like to speak to any of the voters on this list? If not, I will address the board and say we are at the point that we need to make findings of fact and conclusions of law about the voters on the felony list. So at this time, what's the wishes of the board?
We're going to take them individually.
Yes.
Okay.
One by one. Sampson, Patrick, we'll start with that.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that Sampson Fitzpatrick that based upon the finding of facts of the board, the challenge to Mr. Fitzpatrick should be denied.
And Mr. Shawcross, if you could you state the basis for that conclusion?
Due to the evidence provided by Election Director Leanne Price and the Department of Corrections reports, that they be and that the ballot was not counted in the official count, so there's no irregularity.
Thank you.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, with respect to voter Ronald Lewis McFarland.
Based on the evidence presented, the ballot by Ronald Lewis McFarland was not counted in the official count, so there was no irregularity.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thurman Ruffin Jr.
Based on the findings of the evidence provided by Department of Corrections, the ballot was not counted in the official count. Therefore, no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. James Madison Holt.
Based on the evidence presented, James Madison Holt's ballot was not counted in the official count, so there was no irregularity.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Amanda Barefoot Flowers.
Based on the evidence presented, the ballot by Amanda Barefoot Flowers was counted and should have been counted because she was not a felon, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. D'Angelo Daryl Covington.
Based on the findings of the evidence provided, the ballot was not counted in the official count. And no irregularity occurred.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Kendra Francon Bodrick.
Based on the evidence provided, Kendra Franchon Bodrick's ballot was removed. It was not counted, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Finally, Jared Harvey Daughtry.
Based on the findings of the evidence provided, the ballot was not counted. There was no evidence of irregularities.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, now that we have made, as a board, findings of fact as to the voters in this category, our next task is to adopt a conclusion of law with respect to the findings that we made for each voter individually. So I would ask the board, are there any motions regarding proposed conclusions of law for each of the voters, beginning with Sampson Fitzpatrick Sr.?
Based on the findings of the board, the challenge as to Sampson Fitzpatrick Sr.'s ballot should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ronald Lewis McFarland.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Ronald Lewis McFarland should be denied.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? Not all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thurman Ruffin Jr.
Based on the evidence presented, the challenge to the ballot for Ronald Lewis McFarland should be denied.
Is there a second?
Second?
Not, is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. James Madison Holt.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to James Madison Holt should be denied.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Amanda Barefoot Flowers.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Amanda Barefoot Flowers should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. D'Angelo Tyrell Covington.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to D'Angelo Dario Covington's ballot should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kendra Franchione Bodrick.
Based on the findings, the challenge to the vote of Kendra Bodrick should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Finally, Jared Harvey Daughtry.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Jared Harvey Daughtry should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That completes our findings and conclusions for this category of voters. And so now, I think it was appropriate that we adopt proposed ordering paragraphs with respect to this group, and specifically findings as to which voters, with which voters there were irregularities and with which voters there were not irregularities.
I move that the county attorney draw an order consistent with the actions of the board in this hearing, and that an irregularity did not occur with respect to the following voters: Sampson Fitzpatrick, Ronald McFarland, Thurman Ruffin, James Holt, Amanda Flowers, D'Angelo Covington, Kendra Bodrick, and Jared Daughtry.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And with that, I believe we have completed the second group, have we not, Madam Counsel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let's move to the third and the final group, which is the remove voters with votes. I would invite Mr. Griffin's counsel to, is there anything you'd like to bring to the board relative to this group?
One thing that council was just discussing, the words challenge and protest are being used interchangeably, understandably, because there are questions related to each voter on the list. And just for clarification, for the purpose of the record, this is a protest hearing, and we're considering the protest petition as it relates to each individual voter. And so everything's fine with regards to what we have done at this point, but I just want to be clear that the challenge process, for those in the audience, the challenge protest is a process that takes place before canvass, and the protest process is one that takes place at this time.
Well, I would like to state for the record that it's my understanding, and I'll ask the board to correct me if they have a different understanding, but that anytime one of us inadvertently uses the word incorrectly, we mean it correctly. If we don't express it correctly, we do intend to express it correctly. And I don't think any of us are thinking that we're here on anything but what we're here for. But I do recognize that the record needs to be clean and clarified, and so I would state that for the record, and if you don't know what we mean, please ask us, and take that for, I'm speaking for myself, and if any board members want to add to that, they're welcome to do that.
I agree.
We are not lawyers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and keep it straight. That's your job. Don't hesitate to, let us know. what we
Yes, sir.
know.
And your order will appropriately reflect based on our conversations today.
That's right. That won't be the first time one of my orders got cleaned up by the second pair of eyes. Anyway. Okay, we'll move on to the remove voters with votes. Now, for Mr. Griffin, would you like to be heard on any of these items?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that the county is going to put forward that all the voters have been removed except for Linda Barnhart. And with respect to the Jefferson Griffin campaign, again, we rest on the four corners of the protest, the attached affidavit, and attachment 1, and would ask that you consider that in your findings of fact and conclusion of law.
Well, those matters are in our record, and we certainly will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And for purposes of clarification of the record, each board member and counsel for each party present has a list. This list is actually not titled, but this is the non-registered list, and if that could be marked as exhibit number 6.
Okay, I would ask the court reporter to so mark that. All right. Leanne, would you approach and tell us what you found out about these voters?
Okay. Okay, our first one is Michaela Autry. I challenged her, the ballot cast by her, that she had moved to Guilford County. We looked on the voter search for the State Board of Elections, and she registered in that county before the registration deadline, which was October the 11th, and she registered in Guilford County on October the 6th. So that's why her vote was challenged. Next, we have Jared Daughtry, and his was one of the previous ones that was already removed on the other list. He got on 2 lists. So his was already challenged in the other packet with the felons. Is that right? Hold on. I got my papers out of order.
Yes.
It's in here,
correct.
yes, hold on. Why don't I have him? Do y'all have it in y'all's packet?
He was the last one of the felons.
He is? Well, maybe I got him somewhere else. He's not in my group.
Do you need mine?
Yes, I probably do. Okay, Jared Daughtry was also, his vote was also challenged, the ballot cast by Jared Daughtry, because he came on our felon list, and he is serving a felon sentence.
That's it.
Okay, Rochelle Hunt. I challenged her ballot cast by Rochelle Hunt due to the fact that she showed up on our deceased list. Ms. Hunt voted on October the 4th, but her date of death was October, well, we removed her on October the 31st, 2024. I don't see her date of death was on here. We must have cut it off. But she was on our October the 23rd, 2024 list. Kaiser Monroe. This person's vote was challenged due to the fact that they live in Guilford County. They also registered on October the 4th, but they registered in Guilford County before the voter registration deadline, which was October the 11th. Linda Barnhart, that is on the list here. We have that the list that the Griffin petition said that she was a felon conviction. She came on our felon completed list, and she was convicted in August 15th of 2021, and her discharge date was October the 3rd, 2024. So she was not one of those that we challenged her vote during the challenge process, because she had already completed her felon sentence.
And Your Honor, if I may have a question on that point.
Sure.
Ma'am, what efforts, if any, did you take to determine whether that voter had completed all of the terms and conditions of their sentence?
Yes, when we receive the documentations from the State Board of Elections, we get a felon completed, and we also get a felony report. And she came on our felon report that said that it has a discharge when they're convicted and when they're discharged, when they're no longer a felon.
And when you say when they're discharged, does that mean discharged from custody, or does that mean?
That I do not know.
Okay.
But if it says felon completed on the list, in what we've been instructed to do by the State Board, all those that are felons, and we get it from the Department of Corrections, then we determine that the list that they send us is true and accurate, and that's why we determined not to remove her, challenge her vote, because she did her due process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we had Linda Griswold. Her vote was challenged due to the fact that she was not registered in the county. She registered in Wake County. She did so on October the 27th. And the deadline to register in Johnston to be able to vote was October the 11th. So she was already registered in Wake County at the time of the voter registration deadline. And then we have Robin Hutchins. Her ballot was challenged due to the fact that she is deceased. She came on the deceased list on October the 9th, was what day she voted, and we removed her October the 2nd. And she voted by absentee by mail.
So I have a question
Yes, ma'am?
about Linda Barnhart. I see that she voted on the 31st, and then I guess her ballot was removed on the 5th, and then was it then we accepted her ballot after that?
No, we never removed Linda Barnhart's ballot.
Okay.
I know it says remove date there, but that's wrong. We never removed hers.
So her ballot was
Her
never...
vote was counted, yes.
Her vote was counted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That's
She
what I wanted
voted
to know.
early on October 31st.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that shouldn't be there.
Thanks.
Good catch.
Any other questions for Leanne?
Mr. Chairman, if it'd be appropriate for me to ask a question.
Absolutely.
If I can make two quick prefatory, I'm sorry, gotta get the mic again. There we go. Am I being heard? Again, this is James Whalen on behalf of the Democratic Party. Two prefatory points quickly. To my knowledge, the Riggs campaign never received service of this particular protest, and so the protest is improper for that reason. It's also my understanding that voters did not receive service, and therefore it's improper. Second, I'll reiterate my earlier point, this time with respect to Ms. Barnhart, that Judge Griffin bears the burden here to prove that Ms. Barnhart had an active felony sentence when she went to vote. Doing so is a crime, and so accusing Ms. Barnhart of going to vote while she has an active sentence is accusing her of a crime. They have not presented evidence to that effect. The only evidence comes from the county board, as you just heard, that evidence does not show that she was on an active sentence when she voted. And then, if I may, just ask quickly with respect to the first voter here, which I understand has already been challenged, but just to ask quickly the questions, Ms. Autry. General Statute 163-55A says removal from one precinct to another in this state shall not operate to deprive any person of the right to vote in the precinct from which the person has removed until 30 days after the person's removal. And if I'm understanding this correctly, in the documents provided as part of the board's research, Ms. Autry registered to vote in Guilford County on October 6th. 30 days after October 6th is November 5th. And so I guess my question, am I reading this correctly, that this voter removed within that 30 days such that on November 5th, Election Day, here, she was still eligible to vote in Johnston County?
Well, October 6th was the date, was it not? October 6th was the date. The 30-day date that they told us they had to be removed by. So on or before the 6th.
And just for clarity, the statute, like I say, is 163-55A, and they can vote as long as that their right to vote cannot be taken away until 30 days after the person's removal. 30 days after October 6th is Election Day, and so if they're eligible on Election Day, their vote can't be taken. I mean, there's, the 6th through the following Election Day, presumably that person could still vote. Isn't that right? Isn't that 30 days
If
after?
they, within 30 days. If they moved within 30 days of an election, they can go back to their old precinct or their old county to vote. Correct. It's correct.
And I realize that the 6th, I think, is that, like we're saying, is trying to figure out is the 6th inside or outside.
The 30 days,
And I'm
that's
just-
correct. And I didn't take it like that, but 30 days,
I just want to make sure I'm
He's right.
clear. I'm asking my question clearly because 30 days after the 6th is the 5th, and so the person would still be eligible on the 5th,
On the election day.
which means that the vote in Johnston County, it appears, would be proper. Is that correct?
I'm going to object. That's soliciting a conclusion of law from the witness, from a fact witness.
Noted. Go ahead.
Well,
If you,
he registered before October the 11th and Guilford County, which he did it on the 6th. So if you, the law does state that if you move within 30 days of an election, that you go back to your old precinct or your old county, you're within the rights to vote.
That was my only question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
do you want to respond to that? I mean,
I guess if you could bear with me, Your Honor, I've not been presented with these facts. Could you tell me again when the voter moved out of Johnston County, please?
I don't know when they moved, but I do know, have proof that they registered to vote in Guilford County on October the 6th. That's the date that it was processed, October the 6th.
Okay.
And the voter registration deadline was October the 11th. And if you registered in October the 11th in a county, you're eligible to vote in that county. However, if you move within 30 days of an election, 30 days before the election, you are eligible to go back to your old precinct or to your old county and vote. It's not against the law.
So the operative date is the date of moving.
Correct. And that date was October the 6th.
How do you know that's the date the individual moved?
I don't know. I just know what date she registered. That's
Okay.
what date her application was processed. She probably moved, other than that, the county did not process it until October the 6th.
Okay, so
And my office did not call to find out what was the actual date of the application, not the date it was processed. This is a process date. The registration date's a process date, not the actual date on the voter's application.
That's what I count.
But I guess my question is, the statute requires that is applicable to individuals who moved within 30 days of Election Day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have no information about what date this voter moved?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one more question, if I can have that back? Just a quick one. The NCID number on, so I'm, for everybody's reference, I'm looking at Ms. Autry's voter registration file from Guilford County, which was included in this packet. Her NCID begins with a BY, and then it's 831-688. And I believe on here, the first entry on this sort of the cover sheet list of voters, the NCID associated with the Michaela Autry on this list, the one that voted here in Johnston County, is CJ231014. Is there a reason that those two NCIDs would be different?
But CJ is our number.
I did a quick spec. All the other numbers, I believe, are the same, including the folks that moved. So, for example, Keziah Monroe is somebody who moved between counties. She has the same NCID at the new county as she does at the old county. The same thing for Linda Griswold, the same NCID at both places. But this person, Michaela Autry, has a different NCID. So isn't that possible there's two different people?
Are you talking about Michaela Autry?
Yes, ma'am. Michaela
I'm
Autry
sorry,
is-
I'm not following you why you think they're two different people. I'm sorry.
I'm just asking
Okay.
if they're two different, and it seems like for the other folks, the NCIDs match the old
Oh,
address
on
and
the
the new
list.
address.
I get what you're saying.
And this person, Michaela Autry, has, the Michaela Autry in Guilford County has a different NCID number.
Then what's on our list?
That's correct, than the Johnston County one. I'll acknowledge they have the same first, middle, and last name, but I just, that.
Right.
We had that already with a felon voter, that they were very similar names, and I want to make sure that the fact that they had two different NCIDs, to me, suggests possibly they are two different people. Did the county consider that in its analysis?
We did not, sir.
And then just as a follow-up, again, keeping in mind the burden of proof here, did the Griffin campaign present any evidence to the county or at this hearing to suggest that Ms. Autry moved before the 6th, the operative day?
Object to the form of the question.
Overrule. You can answer if you are able.
No, sir. Ask your question again. I'm so sorry.
There was an exchange earlier about whether the county has did any research to figure out, go out and interview her and see when she moved.
No,
But
sir. We did not.
did anybody from the Griffin campaign that filed the protest and is objecting to this voter's vote, did the Griffin campaign present any evidence that this voter had moved before the 6th?
No, sir.
So as far as the county knows, the only information suggests that the move was on the 6th, in which case 30 days, she'd still be eligible on the 5th.
Correct.
Thank you.
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ma'am, are you aware that the Jefferson Griffin campaign did submit evidence in support of this protest in the form of an affidavit?
Yes, but the only report that we've got is what we have here. Is that what you're asking?
No, you just testified that you weren't aware of any evidence that was put forward by the Jefferson Griffin campaign, and I just wanted to make sure that the record was clear that.
Yes, I
Okay.
thought he meant any additional evidence other than what was presented to us in the protest that we received by the Jefferson.
Okay, and the basis of the protest is information that was put forward by the State Board of Elections. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so, as you testified today, what you have before you is evidence in the form of the affidavit, evidence in the form of the information supplied by the State Board of Elections, evidence supplied by the county board in response to public information requests, but no information that would lead you to believe on what date that voter moved.
That's
Is that correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I ask one clarifying question?
Yes.
Maybe just my read is that there is evidence that the voter moved. So maybe I could rephrase the question as, is there any evidence that the voter moved before October 6th?
No, sir.
If I may, Your Honor, is there any evidence at all about when the voter moved?
No, sir.
Okay, but there is the evidence produced by the State Board of Elections that caused you to believe that this was a voter whose vote should be not counted, is that correct?
That is correct.
What evidence led you to that conclusion?
The conclusion that she registered in Guilford County on or before the registration deadline, which was October the 11th. She registered there on October the 6th.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I feel I should clear that up. Is the voter registration deadline, does that change the law that says if you move within 30 days, you vote at your old place?
No, sir.
Okay, so, and that's helpful just to understand that in the county board's research, you were pulling people who registered to vote before the voter registration deadline in a new county. But that was not part of the analysis as whether the vote should count in Johnston County. The fact that they registered before the voter registration deadline in Guilford County doesn't affect the analysis of what we're trying to figure out today is whether this vote should have counted.
I'm going to object to the confusing manner of this compound question.
Well, actually, both of you are clarifying it for me, so I appreciate your input from both sides. Go ahead, were you going to stand?
No.
Let me ask our counsel. So relate you've heard the positions of the two counsel here, and how do these particular facts play out as to who has the burden of proving or disproving the relevant things that are at issue here?
With respect to this particular issue, it's the protester has the burden.
So may I ask, counsel, what evidence would you point us to in satisfaction of that burden for this voter?
Yes, Your Honor. So, number one, it's important to remember what the standard is. And that standard is substantial evidence to believe that violation of the election law or other irregularity or misconduct occurred, and that it would be sufficiently serious to cast doubt on the apparent results of the election. Okay, so as to that last part, we have to take the state in totality. 100 counties have received protests, so even if it is just one vote in this county, it's important to the outcome of the election potentially. As to the actual evidentiary standard, it doesn't have to be a rock-solid slam dunk that some sort of violation occurred. It just has to be more than a scintilla, that it could support a reasonable conclusion that it might have occurred such that you can pass it on to the state board. In this case, we've got publicly available information from the State Board of Elections, who did an internal audit, coupled with information that's also public that was requested pursuant to public records requests. And those pieces of evidence point to an irregularity in that this voter's vote should not have been counted in Johnston County, perhaps in Guilford County, but not Johnston County.
But what is on the scales, what tips the scales either way on this issue? I mean, what are the relevant facts that would show that, and I'll put it to you because you have the burden, but I mean, we got to get, I mean, we're trying to figure out which are the scales even, or which way are they tilting? So tell me why they're tilting in your favor.
Yes, Your Honor. So here we have information that's been submitted into evidence. It's not controverted. Shows that this voter moved such that it was essentially flagged. And the only way that that can be overcome is if it then shifts to my colleague here to show that the move took place on a certain date, and there's just simply no evidence to show that. And so that's what we would rest on.
Do you wish to be heard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First, I would suggest that is not the appropriate shifting of burdens. There's nothing in the statute that suggests that there's any sort of shifting of burdens. What is before the board is a protest saying that this voter should not have voted. And the only evidence here is that the voter registered to vote in a different county on the 6th and 30 days after the 6th of the 5th. And so on the 5th, election day, the voter was still eligible to vote. That's the only evidence available. If the protester were to come forward with evidence that, you know, she had rented a moving van on the 4th, and actually she had already moved by the 5th, and then later registered, that would be something different. But right now, the only evidence before you is that to the extent she moved at all, she moved on the 6th, and that's not the right date. I'll also point that that's important to where the burden lies, because Justice Riggs was not served with this protest. So I'm sort of luckily here. I was here for the other two protests and then found this one and found this information while sitting here. And also that the voter has not been, the voter received, and this is in the letter that Justice Riggs' campaign sent to the board, and in the affidavit of service that's attached to, I assume, this protest, but was attached to the other protests, that outlines what was sent. Judge Griffin did not send anything to these voters. The Republican Party sent postcards to voters. The postcard says you might be affected by a protest. It has a QR code that takes you to a website with every single protest in the state. So the idea that the voter, I mean, this voter could have gotten notice, could have shown up here today and told the board when she moved, but that isn't available to her because she didn't know, you know, she didn't have the protest, and neither did the Justice Riggs campaign. So the burden is squarely on Judge Griffin to produce evidence that this voter's vote should not count. And the fact that she registered on the 6th in Guilford is not evidence that her vote should not count. If there is other evidence out there It has not been presented to the board, and so her vote should count.
What evidence is there that she was not served?
So I'll direct the board to two things, and I'm happy to pass up copies. This, on the 25th, Justice Riggs's campaign sent a letter. This is probably the easiest thing. May I approach them? You don't know that I have 5 copies. I have at least 1 copy, and I may have a couple of others.
That's fine.
This letter hopefully reached the board. The last page on
Your Honor, if I
here-
could see the,
Yeah, but
Yes,
let
let me
him
give
see
you
whatever
this
you're
one.
going to hand up first.
I'm fairly certain I have. I may need that one back if I don't have another copy.
I may have this.
Let me take a look. Unfortunately, we'll need that copy back, but I can make sure you get a copy.
Got a similar.
Maybe me too, I don't care. It won't get
Let's see, here. Let's see. So, let me hand up the letter, and then I believe, I'm not saying right here. So the last page of this letter is the attachment that was attached to an affidavit from Kyle Offerman. Kyle Offerman is the protesters' affiant, who is the one who attested to providing service to the voters. My understanding is Mr. Offerman, and I may have his affidavit here somewhere, I think it's in that letter that I handed up. Mr. Offerman, as I understand it, is the general counsel for the state Republican Party, and in his affidavit, he says that this is what the state Republican Party sent to voters, apparently notifying them that a protest is going to affect their vote. And you can read there that's a template of what the postcard says. And the postcard does not include a copy of service, which is what the protest rules require. It instead is itself sort of a one-sentence postcard with a QR code, and I can represent to the board that the QR code takes you to the state Republican board website, where a website that's used to raise money and provide the information and messaging for the state Republican board. You then have to scroll quite a ways to get to Johnston County, and then there are 5 different protests, some of which have several hundred names on them. And so in order to find out that you, in fact, are the person that's been objected to and why, you would have to click through, you'd have to find this protest, you'd have to find your name on this protest, and then you'd have to see that it says that you moved, and you'd have to know the law that you are allowed to vote within 30 days. So it would be, I think, quite a hurdle to shift the burden to the voter to say that all Judge Griffin has to do here is note that her name appears on a list, and then the voter somehow has to discern from this postcard that she needs to appear before you today and prove that she was eligible to vote. So I'd offer to the board that the only evidence available supports that her vote should count, and if there was other evidence to dissuade you otherwise, the burden is on Judge Griffin to come up with that evidence.
Yes, Your Honor, that's a very long-winded attack on your response to your question, which had to do with what the evidentiary standard was. As you can see, the only thing that the speaker can fall back on is to attack service. The crux of the matter with respect to the issue that you asked about is that in order for their position to support a finding, you would have to find that this voter registered to vote on the date that they moved, on the 6th. There's no evidence that points to that, and having had the misfortune of having to move more than once in my life, I can assure you that you can fall onto reasonable life experience to know that this voter, more likely than not, did not register to vote on the date that they moved. Again, it's not my client's responsibility to prove that, but I think you can fall back onto reason. With respect to service, Judge Griffin's campaign did serve these voters. He served them by mail, which is what's required. The service provided notice, provided actual notice, provided a pathway that is not quite so rigorous as was made to appear by my colleague here, that would show you, where you need to go if you would like to be heard with respect to the protest of your vote. Judge Griffin, he is a judge, but he's just one person. He does not have this huge machine. He is zealously advocating for his candidacy and is trying to challenge votes that he believes should be challenged. He challenged 60,000 of them across the state, and to conform to some higher standard of service and notice would be an impossibility under the requirements of the law. So he did the best that he could. He did it at great expense, and he did it to ensure that people would get actual notice. And I'd be happy to be heard further if you're interested to discuss that, Your Honor.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, you have the floor, and certainly I'm not trying to encourage you or cut you off, but feel free to add as you need to, both of you. And I would like to thank you both for your presentations. I think you've done excellent work.
Gordon, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm keeping this straight in my head, okay? So Judge Griffith filed challenges to these voters alleging that their vote had counted when it should not have counted?
Yes, Your Honor, he filed a protest.
Okay. So, and yet we hear from the Johnston County Board of Elections Director that indeed, except for Linda Barnhart, these votes were not counted. Correct, they were withdrawn. Okay. And you're arguing that Autry's vote should have counted based upon the dates between the registration and Election Day.
That's right. My understanding is that, and I can point to the protest form here, the protest is that there's an election irregularity or misconduct with relation to this list of voters. Now, I'll say, I don't have this particular protest, as I have mentioned, but all these protest forms are the same, and assuming it was filled out on the right form, that's the allegation. And so that sweeps in, that there is an election irregularity with regard to Ms. Autry, and it appears that there was, that Ms. Autry voted, that her vote was removed, and her vote was removed despite that there is no evidence she was not eligible to vote.
Right, and can you read that section about a voter moving? I think you read it before.
Yes. So this is North Carolina General Statute 163-55A. Removal from one precinct to another in the state shall not operate to deprive any person of the right to vote in the precinct from which the person has removed until 30 days after the person's removal.
Okay, so it
I'm sorry.
doesn't actually say moved, it says removal, right?
Right, I'm sorry, right, removed until let me read it again. Removal from one precinct to another in the state shall not operate to deprive any person of the right to vote in the precinct from which the person has removed until 30 days after the person's removal. And for broader context, we've been talking about moving. I think in this case that's the fair description, sort of in layman's terms. This is referring specifically to residency, domicile, which is, in order to remove, you have to establish a new permanent residence.
Right.
And we've been colloquially talking about moving vans and so on, but it's actually not that simple. If, for example, a college student is living at a dorm, they haven't established a new residence there until they have decided for themselves subjectively that they're going to stay in, for example, Greensboro after graduation. It might be that she is already living on campus, but she hasn't made that decision. So it's actually not all that implausible that at the moment of registration, she's making that decision. Am I going to stay a Johnston County resident, or am I going to become a Guilford County resident? and that in filling out that form, that's when she made the decision, in which case that's when legally her residency changed. That's the standard. We don't know, and what I'm offering to the board is that the burden of proof is quite clear here, that the numbered memos state that when a protest is actually is essentially a voter challenge, that it's targeting an individual's vote for eligibility, the protester has to prove their position through affirmative proof. And there's no affirmative proof here.
Thank you.
Any other questions from a board member?
Yeah, how do you get the count of 30 days?
How did I count it? Sorry.
Yeah,
31 days in October. I mean, I can go through them on my fingers. So,
please do.
okay. So after the 6th.
No, well, okay.
After the, so after the 6th would be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But you said the date that they're registered is the first day.
It's after, let me make sure I have the statute here. Until not operate to deprive any person of the right to vote in the precinct from which the person is removed until 30 days after the person's removal. And there is nothing in that statute that would supplant the general rule, which I unfortunately don't have in front of me, but I imagine the other lawyers in the room can tell you in the North Carolina statutes, there's a statute called time, I think is the title of it. And when you count days in the North Carolina statutes, you start with the next day. So for example, someone files a lawsuit and you're trying to count how many days you have to answer it, you start on the next day. And that rule would apply here unless there's some statute that supplants that.
I can't cite you chapter and verse, but I unfortunately would take issue with counsel's assertion. I believe that has to do with the rules of civil procedure, not all North Carolina statutes, and how time is computed. Nonetheless, I don't wish to belabor this, and if your honors believe that there is sufficient evidence upon which to support a finding of fact that this voter moved and registered on the 6th, then I think I would have to concede my point. I just find that very highly unlikely, if not impossible.
I have a comment. We have no idea what day this person moved. So to assume that they moved on the 6th, I think would be not the right move to make, because I doubt that she moved and registered on the same day.
So, Your Honor, in response to that, I would say that what the Jefferson Griffin campaign has done is put forward more than a scintilla of evidence that there's an irregularity by the information supplied by the State Board of Elections as attached to the affidavit.
Does the state board has no record of when she moved, do they, as far as you know?
No, ma'am.
And may I address it quickly? So first, not to get in the weeds of residency law, but again, it's not technically it's not the date she put her gear in a car and drove up. It's the date that she became a Guilford County resident.
And that was when she registered.
And it may have been when she's registered, so it may not have been. I think we're in an agreement. This may be it sounds like a legal dispute over the burden here. The Judge Griffin has not presented any evidence that she moved before October 6th. I haven't presented any evidence that she moved on October 6th. Presumably the only person who could really prove that is the voter, and we already talked about the postcard issue. And so I guess what Judge Griffin's counsel is arguing is that all he needs to do to take somebody's vote away is present some kind of evidence that maybe she wasn't eligible. And once he's done that and sent them a postcard, their vote gets deleted unless they show up, call off of work, and come in the middle of the afternoon and persuade you otherwise. I think that's incorrect as a matter of law. He has to prove his case by affirmative proof. And this board has to find as a fact that she was not eligible before it can find an election irregularity on that basis. And so it's not that the board needs to find as a fact that she moved on the 6th. the board finds as a fact that there is not evidence to show that she was not eligible to vote in Johnston County. And just quickly on the scintilla of evidence, that's a conclusion of law issue. Once the board has decided as a factual matter whether it can find that she moved on a certain day, and I would submit it can't, then it would look at the scintilla of evidence. But if there is no factual finding that she moved before the 6th, then there can't be any conclusion of law that she's ineligible.
But you have no factual finding to prove that she moved on the 6th.
That's correct. But the standard here is that in order for Judge Griffin to prevail, he has to produce evidence that she was not eligible. And the only evidence is that the only evidence that she moved at all is the fact that she filled out a registration form, and that would have been on the 6th. And so that evidence on its own is not enough to prove Judge Griffin's point that she was ineligible to vote in Johnston County. It's a serious thing to take somebody's vote away. And so in order to do that, there needs to be some sort of affirmative evidence that she was not eligible. So far, there's no evidence that she's not eligible to vote.
Your Honors, on behalf of Judge Griffin, we are not asking anybody to take anybody's vote away. I don't know that y'all have the power to do that. What we are asking is that you make a finding and conclusion that some substantial evidence exists that an irregularity occurred. And I think Judge Griffin has shown that, and I'll rest there.
I thank you guys for being here, and I thank you for your input. It's very helpful, and we all take it very seriously, but I appreciate it very much. I guess is there anyone else that would like to speak to any of these issues? If not, we're going to move ahead with the findings on these. So I would call upon the board members again. Let's go down the list, and I would invite you to make motions as to findings of fact and conclusions of law. But first, the findings of fact. So let's start with the voter, Michaela Elizabeth Autry.
And that's the hard one.
Yeah.
Can we start at the bottom?
Well,
We'll work bottom up. That's fine.
Okay,
I'd like to,
go ahead.
prior to any motion, I'd like to have some discussion on this subject.
Yeah.
Well, let's save it for last and have our discussion at that time. How about that? Or do you want to?
That's fine.
Okay.
Let's clear the deck and save
Okay.
it for that. Okay, we'll go bottom up. Robin Moore Hutchins.
Okay, based on the evidence, the voter Robin Moore Hutchins' ballot was not counted in the official count, so there is no irregularity.
Second?
And a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Linda Creech Griswold.
Based on the evidence presented, there were no irregularities in this person's information. So, with respect to the
For Linda Creech Griswold.
for Linda Creech Griswold, regularity did not occur with respect to her. So, what's the rest of that I'm supposed to say?
That's two different things.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Just a moment. Her ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Linda Ann Barnhart.
I'll make a motion that Linda Ann Barnhart's ballot was not counted in the official count, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Her vote was counted.
Oh, it was counted, I'm sorry.
That
Can you
one was
restate
counted.
that?
It was counted, yeah.
Yes.
Withdraw my motion.
Just,
Just rephrase it.
Because it was counted.
When no irregularity occurred and the vote was counted.
Yeah.
So,
So we don't need to act on that.
Based on the evidence presented, the voter Linda Ann Barnhart's ballot was counted and should have been counted because she had completed her felony, and therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second the motion.
there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Keziah Arena Monroe.
Based on information presented for Keziah Rena Monroe, ballot was not counted in the official count, therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Rochelle Sander Hunt.
Based on the evidence, the voter Rochelle Sander Hunt ballot was not counted in the official count, so there is no irregularity.
Second motion.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Jared Harvey Daughtry.
Based on the information presented on Jared Harvey Daughtry, the voter was not counted in the official count, therefore no irregularity occurred.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, let's do the conclusions of law as to these, and we're saving everything for the save our arguments on both points, because there's some things to discuss, as John said, and I'd rather get these out of the way. So let's go back up the list. We need a conclusion of law, proposed conclusion of law for Robin Moore Hutchin.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Robin Moore Hutchins should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Linda Creech Griswold.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to Linda Creech Griswold should be affirmed. Should be denied.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Linda Ann Barnhart.
Did we act on that since she had served her term?
We counted that one.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to voter Linda Ann Barnhart should be denied.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Keziah Rena Monroe.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Keziah Rena Monroe should be denied.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Rochelle Sander Hunt.
Based on the evidence of the information presented, there was no finding of irregularity to this voter. And based on the findings, the challenge should be denied.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Jared Harvey Daughtry.
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge to Jared Harvey Daughtry should be denied.
Second?
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we are left now with the one of Michaela Elizabeth Autry, and I think it's appropriate for the board to discuss this in however you want to, and then we will act on it. But John, you had mentioned you had some thoughts, so why don't you kick us off?
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Yes.
We have contacted the Guilford County Board of Elections, and her application date, she signed her application on September the 17th, 2024. How we have been instructed when our registration application comes into our office, when we process it, it's processed with the date that they actually signed the application. So her date should have been, on her registration date, should have been the date that she signed her application.
And that was
And
September.
I don't know why hers was October the 6th. I also looked on this, they've not updated their voter history, so I was going to look and see if she's also voted in Guilford County, but they've not finished processing their voter history. So there's nothing for us to be able to tell that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, it's okay to say no. I know that we extended this time. I was just wondering if I could ask a couple of quick questions on that.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier that they have different NCID numbers. Did the county do any other research to see if there are if anything other than her name links the voter in Guilford to the voter in Johnston County?
No, sir.
Anything to look at, see, like, they're the same age, or they're the same race, or anything like that?
Well, yes, they had the same date of birth.
Okay.
You might need to go to the names.
Yes.
Where is it?
When we remove her, that's part of the removal process. We get, when you register in another county, at the very bottom, you put down what your last county that you resided in. So that's how we get cancellations. So that we were sent one with her name, her date of birth, and her previous address where she was registered.
I see. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
What's the wishes of the board?
Well,
Well, the application date certainly pushes
It's-
back
it sure does.
beyond any question about coming back to vote in Johnston County.
But as to the 30 days, then if it was October the 6th, she was eligible to vote in Guilford County.
But it was September 17th, you
Well,
said?
no, I'm just saying, so,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a problem of somebody being eligible to vote in two places.
I see what you're saying.
And then if you talk about same-day registration and voting, I tried to find when registration was effective, but our director says that it's governed by the date of the application, so I think that settles it all for us. I don't care when they moved, that's when they signed their application.
Yeah,
So in my mind, all the questions are answered.
I agree.
Is there a motion as to Michaela Elizabeth Autry? Well, first we need to make a finding as to
Right.
Michaela Elizabeth Autry.
Right.
Is there a motion as to a finding?
According to the evidence presented, the voter Michaela Elizabeth Autry's ballot was not counted in the official count, so there's no irregularity.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right, is there a proposed conclusion of law with respect to Michaela Elizabeth Autry?
Based upon the findings of the board, the challenge as to Michaela Elizabeth Autry should be denied.
Second?
Then a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I believe that completes our,
No, Mr. Chairman,
I know, but I
Okay.
mean, that completes all of the list of voters. But now, of the three groups, but now, we need to do proposed ordering paragraphs
Yeah.
with respect to this group. And so, what is there a proposed ordering paragraph with respect to this group as it relates, and which ones did irregularities occur or not occur?
Oh, yeah, we got one that is a flip-flop, right? So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that an irregularity did not occur with respect to the following voters: Autry, Daughtridge, Hunt, Monroe, Griswold, and Hutchins, and that the county attorney draw an order consistent with the actions of this board in this hearing and for chairman's signature.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Before we move on to any other business, if any, let me consult with council and say, have we checked all the boxes that we need
No,
to check?
I left out one, didn't we?
Didn't do anything with,
We approved her, didn't we?
Yes.
I'm sorry, okay,
Yes. Thank you.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that an irregularity did occur with respect to,
Her vote was counted.
her vote was counted, okay?
Yes, yeah.
Excuse me.
She just needs to be added into the last list.
Excuse me, I just left her off. Okay.
Yeah, because I asked Leanne about that when it was removed, and she says it wasn't removed.
So I make a motion that we add Linda Barnhart to the previous motion.
Great. Second?
All right. There's been a motion and a second. It's Linda Barnhart. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, with respect, I go back to our council. Have we, Madam Counsel, have we checked our boxes for you?
I believe you have, Mr. Chairman. The intent will be consistent with the state board's direction that we will address all of the protests from the candidate in one single order. And so I appreciate the diligence in which you went through each of the categories and each of the voters. That will assist me in doing that. And consistent with the board's directive, I will draw an order that is consistent with the action of the board for the chairman's signature. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that board members may have about that.
Any questions of council? Is there anything else to come before us today?
Your Honor, I have one housekeeping item.
Yes.
I'm not trying to prolong this. In reviewing these materials this morning, I noticed that for the protest that involves registration denial, I believe that list we just went over, the council addendum was unsigned, and I secured a signed council addendum for that. And if I could approach or just hand this to Madam Court Reporter.
If you'd hand it to the court reporter, we'll make it part of the record.
Thank you.
And that would be exhibit number 7.
Okay. Anything else from council? Anything else from the board? We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move for that we adjourn.
Second.
Is there any, hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.